The queen lost her daughter, and a human made the stars tremble. Part 5. The weapon fired, and Daniel felt the blast tear through his side like fire. He fell, his body twisting as it hit the ground, blood spreading across the floor beneath him. Pain consumed everything, turning the world into a narrow tunnel of agony. But even as he fell, he kept himself between Selmak and the princess. Even dying, he would not move. Ceylon Max stepped forward, his weapon raised for a second shot. Foolish creature, you threw your life away for nothing. The princess will be sold, and your species will remain the insignificant insects you have always been. Kefsira stepped out from behind Daniel's fallen body. Her wings spread wide, and something changed in her compound eyes. The containment field that had suppressed her psychic abilities was gone, and now, in this moment of crisis, she reached into herself and found the power that was her birthright. She touched Selmak's mind. The ring's leader froze. His weapon slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers. His face contorted as experiences that were not his own flooded through his consciousness. Every child he had stolen, every family he had destroyed, every moment of terror and grief and loss that his organization had caused over a century of cruelty. Kefsira showed him all of it, made him feel all of it, forced him to understand what his merchandise truly was. Selmak collapsed, his mind overwhelmed by a lifetime of suffering that was never meant for a single being to bear. He was alive, but something in him had broken. He would never give orders again. Valathsor and her warriors found them moments later, fighting their way through the last of the station's defenders. The commander took one look at Daniel's wound and began shouting orders. A warrior lifted him carefully while another applied emergency medical treatment. Through the haze of pain, Daniel heard Velosor's voice. The human is injured. We need to reach the ship immediately. The station is falling apart, one of her warriors reported. Selmak activated self-destruct protocols. We have minutes before this entire asteroid explodes. Then we run. They ran. Velothsor carried Kefsira while her warriors cleared the path ahead. Other prisoners stumbled out of cells that Velothsor's team had opened during the assault. Dozens of stolen lives suddenly free to escape. Some ran for the docking bays. Others simply stood in confusion, unable to believe that their nightmare was ending. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness as they moved. He saw flashes of corridor walls and emergency lights, heard the distant rumble of explosions as the station began to tear itself apart. Someone was keeping pressure on his wound, keeping him alive through sheer determination. He thought it might be the princess. He was not certain. They reached the silent blade just as the first major explosions shook the docking bay. Velothsor threw herself into the pilot's seat and launched the ship with a violence that would have been dangerous under normal circumstances. Behind them, the ring's fortress erupted in a chain reaction of fire and debris. A century of evil consumed in seconds. The silent blade raced through the Dogfall Nebula, following the beacon path in reverse, flying faster than safety allowed because there was no time for caution. Around them, other ships appeared on sensors, vessels from the station that had escaped the destruction. Some were ring operatives fleeing justice. Others were prisoners returning to lives they thought they had lost forever. Daniel opened his eyes somewhere during the journey. Kefsira was beside him, her blade arm resting gently on his uninjured shoulder, her touch warm and careful. "You saved me," she said. Her voice through the translator was soft, almost disbelieving. "You put yourself between me and death. Why would you do that?" Daniel tried to speak, but the pain made it difficult. He managed a few words. "Because you matter. Because your mother is waiting." Kefsira was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, there was something new in her voice. Something like wonder. "I have heard stories about humans. The other species say you are young and weak and unimportant. They say you are barely worth noticing in the grand scale of the galaxy. She paused. They are wrong. I understand that now. Daniel closed his eyes again. The darkness was peaceful, and he let himself drift. The Volanthi fleet was waiting when they emerged from the nebula. 50 warships formed an honor guard around the tiny scout vessel, escorting it toward the flagship, where Queen Seraphine waited with her court. The news had spread through the psychic network. The princess was alive. The princess was coming home. Daniel was barely conscious when they carried him aboard the flagship. He was aware of movement, of voices, of the warm pressure of Volanthi medical equipment working to repair his damaged body. He heard the Queen's voice somewhere above him, speaking words he could not quite understand. He woke 3 days later in a chamber designed for human physiology, surrounded by equipment to monitor his vital signs. Velithsor was there, standing guard by his bed. "You survived," she said. "The healers were not certain you would. Your species is remarkably fragile, so I have been told." Daniel's voice was rough, but he managed a weak smile. "The princess?" "Reunited with her mother. The queen has not left her side since we returned." Velithsor paused. "You have been asked to attend them when you were strong enough." It took another 2 days before Daniel could walk without assistance. When he finally entered the throne chamber, leaning on a staff provided by the Volanthi healers, he found Queen Seraphine waiting for him with Kefsera at her side. The queen rose from her throne and descended to meet him, just as she had during their first encounter. But this time, her posture was different. This time, there was no grief weighing down her ancient form. There was something else instead, something that looked very much like gratitude. "Daniel Torres," she said through the translator. "You kept your promise." "I told you I would," he replied simply. "You nearly died keeping it. You put yourself between my daughter and death without hesitation. A human, protecting a Volanthi princess." She shook her head slowly, a gesture she had learned from studying human behavior. "I have ruled for 800 years. I have seen countless species claim honor and courage and loyalty. Most of them were liars. But you, human, you are true." She extended her blade arm and pressed it gently against Daniel's hand, the gesture reserved for family. From this day forward, Queen Seraphine declared, humans are no longer insignificant in Volanthi eyes. Any human who needs sanctuary will find it in our space. Any enemy who threatens humanity will answer to my fleet. This is my oath, sealed with the blood you shed for my daughter." Daniel bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. But I did not do this for reward. I know." The Queen's voice softened. "You did it because a child was in danger. You did it because a mother was suffering. You did it because that is who you are." She paused. "Your daughter Lily must be very proud of her father." Daniel thought of Lily, grown now with children of her own. He thought of the promise he had made when he found her in that cell years ago. He thought of all the lost children he had helped since then, and all the ones still waiting to be found. "She knows I keep my promises," he said. "That is enough." When Daniel finally returned to human space, he carried the Queen's mark on his shoulder, a sign of alliance that would open doors across the galaxy. Word spread quickly. The story traveled from station to station, planet to planet, species to species. A human had walked into the heart of an alien empire, faced down a century of evil, and brought a princess home. Other civilizations began to pay attention. They had dismissed humans for so long, these fragile creatures from a small blue world. But now they wondered what they might have missed. Humans, they realized, were not defined by their size or their strength, or how long they had traveled among the stars. They were defined by what they would do for those who could not save themselves. And sometimes, that was enough to make the stars tremble. The Queen lost her daughter, and a human made the stars tremble. Part 4. Daniel docked. The shuttle at the station's main trading bay alone. He had changed into finer clothes borrowed from the Silent Blade supplies, adopting the appearance of a wealthy collector rather than a worn tracker. The Volanthi fabrics felt strange against his skin, but they sent the right message. Credits could buy anything on this station, including an audience with the people in charge. Guards met him at the airlock. They were a mixed group, representing half a dozen species that Daniel recognized and several he did not. All of them were armed with weapons that could kill him in an instant. All of them looked at him with the cold eyes of professionals who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "State your business," the lead guard demanded. He was a Corvathi, a reptilian species known for their strength and their complete lack of mercy. "My name is Simon Ward," Daniel said, using an identity he had created years ago for operations exactly like this one. "I represent certain parties who are interested in acquiring a very specific item. I believe your organization recently came into possession of a Volanthi princess." The guard's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" Daniel smiled. "I have excellent sources, and my clients have excellent funds. I would like to discuss terms with whoever is in charge." There was a long pause while the guard communicated with someone through a device implanted in his ear. Then he nodded and gestured for Daniel to follow. "Selmac will see you. But be warned, human. If this is some kind of trick, you will die screaming." "I appreciate the hospitality," Daniel replied calmly. They led in through the station's interior, and Daniel studied everything he passed. The layout, the guard positions, the security checkpoints. He noted where doors opened automatically and where they required authorization. He counted the cameras and marked the blind spots. All of this information would be useful later if he lived long enough to use it. The station was larger than he expected. Corridors branched off in every direction, leading to sections marked with symbols he did not recognize. But one section was unmistakable. A long hallway lined with transparent cells, each one containing a figure in stasis. Daniel saw beings of a dozen different species frozen in suspended animation, their bodies preserved for eventual sale. A gallery of stolen lives, each one representing someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's beloved. His jaw tightened, but he kept walking. They brought him to a large chamber decorated with trophies from across the galaxy. Weapons hung on the walls alongside artifacts and what appeared to be preserved specimens of extinct creatures. At the center of the room, seated on a chair that was almost a throne, was Lane-Mac that the ring's leader was old even by Kovathi standards. His scales faded to gray and crisscrossed with scars that told stories of violence. He wore robes of expensive fabric, but his body still carried the muscular tension of a predator. His eyes fixed on Daniel with naked calculation. "A human buyer," Selmac said. "How interesting. Your species rarely has the credits for our merchandise. My clients have more credits than you might expect." Daniel stood at ease, projecting the confidence of someone who belonged in rooms like this. They have specific tastes. A Volanthi princess would be a crown jewel for their collection. The princess is not yet for sale. There are complications with her species. The psychic bond she shares with her mother makes her difficult to contain. We are still finding ways to suppress it fully. I understand. But my clients are patient, and they are willing to pay a premium for early access. Name your price. Selmac leaned forward, his eyes glittering. You speak as if you have negotiated such purchases before, human. Yet I know every major buyer in this sector, and I have never heard of Simon Ward. Daniel felt the shift in the room. The guards behind him moved closer. Selmac's posture changed from curious to predatory. I find myself wondering, the ring's leader continued, how you knew about the princess at all. That information was carefully restricted. Only a handful of people outside this station were aware of our acquisition. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. I think you are not what you claim to be. I assure you, do not bother with lies. One of my informants on Horizon's Edge warned me about a human who was asking questions about missing persons. A former investigator named Daniel Torres. Apparently, he has a history with organizations like mine. Selmac stood, his full height making Daniel feel very small. You cost us a great deal of money 8 years ago, Mr. Torres. Several of my predecessors wanted to hunt you down, but other priorities took precedence. Daniel did not run. There was nowhere to run. He kept his voice steady. Your predecessors should have hunted me. It would have saved you this moment. Selmac laughed. I admire your spirit. But you are one human, alone in the heart of my operation, surrounded by guards who would enjoy killing you slowly. What exactly do you think you are going to accomplish? I am going to rescue the princess, Daniel said simply. And I am going to end your organization. With what army? The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on a moment later, bathing everything in red. Alarms began to wail throughout the station. Selmac's amusement vanished, replaced by fury. What have you done? I told you, Daniel said. You should have hunted me 8 years ago. While Daniel had been keeping Selmac occupied, Velosaur and her warriors had crawled through the station's waste processing systems, just as planned. They had reached the power core and deactivated the main generators. In the chaos of the blackout, they were now fighting their way toward the containment cells. Daniel moved before the guards could react. He was not a soldier, not a trained warrior, but he had spent his life tracking dangerous people into dangerous places. He knew how to survive when everything went wrong. He grabbed a ceremonial blade from the wall and threw himself sideways as energy blasts tore through the space where he had been standing. He rolled, came up running, and made for the door. Behind him, Selmac was screaming orders, his guards scrambling to respond to threats from multiple directions. Daniel ran through corridors, filled with smoke and flashing lights. He passed ring operatives rushing toward the sounds of fighting and ducked into maintenance passages that most people did not know existed. His mental map of the station guided him toward the containment wing, toward the gallery of stolen lives, toward Kefsira. He found her in a cell at the end of the hall, surrounded by a containment field that glowed with suppression technology. She was awake, her compound eyes wide with confusion and fear, her wings pressed flat against her back. She looked so young, so vulnerable. Daniel approached the control panel and began working to disable the containment field. His hands were steady despite the chaos around him, his focus absolute. Who are you? Kefsira asked. Her translator rendered her voice as soft and uncertain. Why are you here? My name is Daniel Torres, he said without looking up from the controls. I am here because your mother sent me. I promised her I would bring you home. A human? Disbelief colored her voice. You are risking your life for a Volante? The containment field flickered and died. Daniel looked at her then, meeting those strange alien eyes with all the conviction he possessed. I am risking my life for a daughter, he said. That is all that matters. The wall behind them exploded inward, and Selmac emerged from the smoke, a heavy weapon in his hands and murder in his eyes. You think you can steal from me? He roared. You think you can walk into my house and take what is mine? Daniel pushed Kefsira behind him, putting his body between her and the weapon. She was never yours, he said. She was never merchandise. She is a princess. She is a daughter. And she is going home. Selmac raised his weapon to fire. And Daniel Torres, unarmed and outmatched, prepared to die protecting someone else's child. The Queen lost her daughter, and a human made the stars tremble. Part 3. The ship they gave Daniel was called the Silent Blade. a Velante scout vessel designed for speed and stealth rather than combat. It was smaller than he expected, crewed by only 6 warriors including Commander Velisor. Like the flagship, it was alive, its walls warm to the touch and its corridors filled with the soft glow of bioluminescence. Daniel had spent his career on human ships of cold metal and humming machinery. This vessel felt like traveling inside a sleeping creature. They entered the Darkfall Nebula 12 hours after leaving the fleet. The nebula was beautiful from outside, a swirling mass of purple and black gases lit from within by dying stars. But as soon as they crossed the boundary, Daniel understood why it had claimed so many ships. The electromagnetic interference hit them like a wave, scrambling sensors and navigation systems, filling their communications with static. The viewports showed nothing but churning darkness. They were flying blind into a storm that stretched across light years. Velisor stood beside him on the bridge, her compound eyes watching as he worked. "Our instruments are useless," she said through her translator. "How do you intend to find anything in this chaos?" Daniel pulled out a small device he had kept with him for 8 years. It was a beacon reader, modified to detect the specific signal pattern used by the Collector's Ring. When I found their base the first time, I captured one of their navigation beacons. I spent months studying its signal patterns, learning how they communicate with each other. The beacons are designed to look like natural debris, but they pulse at a frequency just below normal detection range. He activated the reader. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then, faint but clear, a rhythmic pulse appeared on the display. "There," Daniel said. "Bearing 47 degrees starboard. About 2 million kilometers away." Velisor gave an order, and the pilot turned the ship toward the signal. The silent blade moved through the swirling darkness, following a path that no sensor could detect but Daniel's little device could trace. "You have carried that beacon reader for 8 years, Velisor observed, waiting for another chance to hunt them." "I always knew the ring was bigger than the operation I destroyed," Daniel replied. "I always knew they would surface again. I hoped I would get another chance to finish what I started." "But why?" "You saved your daughter. You could have returned to your normal life." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Because there were other children in that facility. Dozens of them. I saved as many as I could, but some were already gone, sold to buyers I could not trace. Sometimes I still see their faces when I close my eyes." He turned to look at Velisor. "I could not save all of them, but I can save the ones who come after. Every time I stop someone like the ring, I am keeping a promise to those children I could not help." Velisor studied him with those strange compound eyes. "You are not what I expected," she said finally. "Your species is so young, so fragile. I did not understand why the Queen chose to trust you. And now? Now I begin to see." She tilted her head slightly. "There is something in humans that is difficult to name. A stubbornness, perhaps. A refusal to accept that something cannot be done." Daniel smiled faintly. "We call it hope. Or maybe stupidity. Sometimes it is hard to tell the difference." They followed the beacons deeper into the nebula, each one guiding them to the next. The journey took 18 hours, the silent blade weaving through clouds of ionized gas and around the corpses of dead stars. The crew worked in shifts, but Daniel did not sleep. He could not afford to miss a signal, could not risk losing the trail in this endless darkness. On the 19th hour, they detected a ship. It was a ring patrol vessel, a small craft armed with weapons that looked too advanced for a criminal organization. The patrol was moving slowly, checking the beacons, unaware that they were being followed. "We should destroy them," Velisor said, "before they can alert their base." "No." Daniel studied the patrol's trajectory on his display. "They are heading home. If we follow them, they will lead us directly to the station. And if they detect us, They will not. Their sensors are as blind as ours in this nebula. As long as we stay far enough behind, they will never know we are here. Velithsor hesitated, then nodded. Very well. We follow the humans' plan. They trailed the patrol ship for another 6 hours, keeping just enough distance to avoid visual detection. Daniel watched the readings on his beacon reader, noting how the signals grew stronger and more frequent as they approached the heart of the nebula. The ring had built their base in the one place no one would think to look, hidden behind a wall of natural interference that made it invisible to the outside. Universe thawed, and then they saw it. The station emerged from the darkness like a monster rising from deep water. It was massive, built into the side of an asteroid that drifted in the eye of the nebulous storm. Gun emplacements studded its surface. Shield generators hummed with power. Docking bays gaped like open mouths, and dozens of ships floated around it, ranging from small patrol craft to heavily armed cruisers. By the Queen's blood, Velithsor whispered, "They have an armada." Daniel counted the ships, the weapon placements, the defensive positions. The ring was not just a criminal syndicate. They were a small empire, hidden in the darkness, preying on the rest of the galaxy from their invisible fortress. Sensors are detecting Volanthi life signs inside the station, the pilot reported. Multiple signatures. The princess is there. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. She was alive. Kethsira was alive. How do we get inside? Velithsor asked. Our ship cannot fight through those defenses. We are outnumbered 50-1. Daniel studied the station, looking for weaknesses, looking for opportunities. His mind worked through scenarios, discarding plans that would not work, focusing on the ones that might. We do not fight through, he said finally. We walk in. Walk in? I will pose as a buyer. The ring sells to anyone with enough credits. I will request an audience with their leadership. Claim that I am interested in purchasing the princess. While they are focused on me, you and your warriors will infiltrate through their waste processing system. He pointed to a series of vents on the station's underside. Those access points will not be guarded. No one expects an attack to come through their garbage disposal. Velithsor made a sound that might have been a laugh. You want the Queen's elite warriors to crawl through waste? I want them to save a princess, Daniel replied. The method is less important than the result. She considered this for a long moment. Then she straightened, her blade arms flexing. My warriors will do what is necessary. But you understand that if you are captured, if your deception fails, we will not be able to rescue you. I understand. Then we proceed. Velithsor turned to her crew. Prepare for infiltration. We have a princess to bring home. Daniel looked at the station one more time. This fortress of criminals who had stolen children and destroyed families for a century. They thought they were untouchable. They thought no one could reach them in their hidden sanctuary. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 20 hours remained. It would have to be enough. The Queen lost her daughter, and a human made the stars tremble. Part 1. The Volanthi Queendom stretched across 40 star systems, and every single one of them fell silent on the day Princess Kethsira vanished. The Volanthi were ancient beings who looked like giant mantises with 4 arms and wings that folded against their backs like cloaks of silver. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years, and in all that time, no one had ever dared to touch their royal family. Sareth Vin felt her daughter disappear like a wound opening in her mind. The psychic bond between Volanthi mothers and their children was sacred and unbreakable, a thread of consciousness that connected them across any distance. One moment, Kethsira was there, warm and alive and curious about the universe. The next moment, she was gone. Not dead. The Queen would have felt death, but gone, as if someone had wrapped her daughter in darkness and hidden her from the stars themselves. The Queen screamed. And her scream was not just sound. It was a psychic wave that rippled through every Volante mind in 3 sectors. Workers collapsed in their hives. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Ships drifted off course as their crews fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the raw agony of their monarch. The empire that had stood for millennia began to crack in a single moment of grief. Kethsera had been on a diplomatic mission to Horizon's Edge, a massive space station that floated at the intersection of 12 different species territories. It was a place of trade and negotiation, but also a place where criminals operated in the shadows. Pirates and smugglers, and worse, called it home. The princes had gone there to discuss trade agreements with several minor species. Accompanied by a guard of 20 elite warriors, they found the guards dead, their bodies arranged in a circle around an empty space where the princess should have been. No witnesses, no evidence, no ransom demand. Whoever had taken her had done so with surgical precision, killing some of the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy without raising an alarm. The Volante fleet arrived at Horizon's Edge within 6 hours. 50 warships surrounded the station, their weapons powered and ready. The fleet commander broadcast a simple message to every ship and every being on the station. Return the princess within 12 hours, or the station and everyone on it would be reduced to dust. Panic spread through Horizon's Edge like fire. Ships began launching in every direction, desperate to escape before the Volante made good on their threat. The station's council, a group of representatives from the various species who used the port, sent frantic messages to every government they could reach. No one wanted a war with the Volante. No one could afford one. But no one knew where the princess was, and the clock was ticking. Daniel Torres sat in a small bar near the station's lower docks and watched the chaos unfold on the screens above the counter. He was a human in his mid-40s, with gray starting to show in his dark hair and lines around his eyes that came from too many years of difficult work. He wore simple clothes, nothing that would mark him as anyone special. Just another human trying to make a living on the edges of civilized space. But Daniel was not just another human. He had spent 15 years as a military investigator before leaving the service, and another 10 years working as a freelance tracker. He found people who did not want to be found. He brought back children who had been stolen from their families. He had a reputation among those who knew of such things. A reputation for being relentless and patient, and utterly unwilling to stop once he had accepted a case. He watched the footage of the crime, seeing that someone had leaked to the station's news feeds. He studied the positions of the dead guards, the pattern of their wounds, the empty space at the center. And he felt something cold settle in his stomach, because he recognized this word. He had seen it before, 8 years ago, in a case that had nearly destroyed him. The Collector's Ring. That was what they called themselves. A syndicate that specialized in acquiring individuals of extreme value. Not for ransom, for sale. They collected royalty and religious leaders and unique specimens, anyone who would fetch a high price from the right buyer. Daniel had crossed paths with them once, when they took his daughter Lily from a colony world. He had spent 3 years hunting them, and when he finally found them, he had burned their operation on that planet to ash. But the ring was bigger than one planet. They had operations across the galaxy, hidden in places where no one thought to look. Daniel stood up from his seat and walked to the station's communications center. The crowds parted around him without realizing they were doing it. There was something in the way he moved, something quiet and certain, that made people step aside. He sent a message to the Volante flagship. A simple message, just a few words. He requested an audience with Queen Sereth Vin. He told her that he knew who had taken her daughter and where they were holding her. He told her that he could bring Kethsera home. The beings around him thought he had lost his mind. The Volanthi did not negotiate with other species. They certainly did not grant audiences to humans, a race so young in galactic terms that most civilizations barely acknowledged their existence. Humans had only left their homeworld 200 years ago. They were small and soft and short-lived. They had no psychic abilities, no natural weapons, no ancient wisdom. What could a human possibly offer the grieving queen of an empire? Daniel waited. He knew the Volanthi were monitoring all communications on the station. He knew they would see his message. And he knew that somewhere on that flagship, someone would wonder what this strange human knew that made him brave enough or foolish enough to make such a claim. 3 hours passed. The deadline grew closer. More ships fled the station. The council sent another desperate plea to the fleet. And then Daniel's communicator buzzed with a response. The Queen would see him. Shuttle arrived to take him to the flagship. The Volanthi soldiers who escorted him said nothing, but their blade arms stayed ready, and their compound eyes never left him. He was a curiosity to them, maybe a threat, definitely a puzzle. Humans were supposed to be insignificant. Humans were supposed to know their place as the shuttle crossed the void between the station and the massive warship. Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a young princess was being held by people who saw her as nothing more than merchandise. Somewhere out there, a mother was drowning in grief, ready to burn the galaxy down if it meant finding her child. Daniel understood that feeling better than anyone. He had felt it himself years ago when Lily was taken. He had made a promise to himself then that he would never stop fighting for lost children. He had kept that promise through blood and pain and sacrifice. He would keep it now. The Volanthi did not know what humans were capable of. They did not understand what a human would do for a child, any child, even one that was not their own. They were about to learn. The shuttle entered the flagship's hangar, and Daniel Torres walked into the heart of an alien empire, carrying nothing but his knowledge and his determination and the memory of his daughter's face. When he finally brought her home, he would do the same for Kethsira. He would find her. He would save her. And if the collector's ring got in his way, he would teach them why humans should never be underestimated. The stars themselves were about to tremble. The Queen lost her daughter, and a human made the stars tremble. Part 2. The Volanthi flagship was alive. Daniel realized this as soon as he stepped off the shuttle. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, colors shifting from blue to purple to green in patterns that seemed almost like breathing. The air was thick with chemical scents that made his eyes water and his skin tingle. This ship had not been built. It had been grown, shaped over centuries, by Volanthi bioengineers into a living vessel that responded to its crew like a body responds to a mind. The soldiers pushed him forward through corridors that twisted and curved in ways that defied human architecture. Other Volanthi watched him pass, their compound eyes glittering with what might have been curiosity or contempt. He was smaller than them by half, his body soft and fragile where theirs was armored and armed. His skin was bare where theirs was covered in plates of natural chitin. He had no blade arms, no wings, no psychic abilities. To them, he must have looked like a creature that had wandered out of its natural habitat and stumbled into a world where it did not belong. They brought him to the throne chamber at the heart of the ship. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows, its walls lined with alcoves where elite guards stood motionless as statues. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across every surface, creating an effect like standing inside a living cathedral. And at the center of it all, on a throne that had grown from the ship itself, sat Queen Serethvin. She was ancient. Daniel could see it in the scars that marked her exoskeleton, each one a record of some battle or challenge she had survived over her centuries of rule. She was massive, twice the size of her soldiers, Her forearms folded across her thorax, and her wings spread behind her like a cloak of tarnished silver. Her compound eyes reflected thousands of tiny images of Daniel as he approached, and he had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing not just his body, but something deeper, something he kept hidden from everyone else. The soldiers forced him to his knees. A translator device hummed to life, converting the Queen's subsonic vibrations into words he could understand. "You are the human who claims to know where my daughter is," the Queen said. Her voice through the translator was flat and mechanical, but Daniel could feel the weight of grief and rage behind it. "Speak quickly. My patients died when my child vanished." Daniel kept his voice calm and steady. "Your Majesty, Princess Kethsira was taken by a criminal syndicate called the Collector's Ring. They specialize in acquiring individuals of extreme political or biological value. They do not take hostages for ransom. They take merchandise for sale." The Queen's blade arms twitched. The guards shifted, their weapons rising slightly. Daniel continued, "The ring has been operating for over a century. They have taken heirs and religious leaders and unique specimens from dozens of species. They are careful, patient, and extremely well-funded. They have never been caught because they hide in places where no one thinks to look. And you know where this place is?" The Queen leaned forward, her massive form casting shadows across Daniel. "A human knows what our intelligence networks have failed to discover? I know because I have hunted them before." Daniel met her gaze without flinching. 8 years ago, they took my daughter from a colony world. Her name is Lily. She was 8 years old. They held her for 3 months before I found their base and got her back." Silence fell over the throne chamber. The Queen studied him with those 1,000-faceted eyes, and Daniel felt the weight of her attention like pressure against his skull. "You expect me to believe," she said slowly, "that a single human tracked down a syndicate that has evaded entire civilizations?" "I do not expect you to believe anything," Daniel replied. "I expect you to listen to my evidence and make your own judgment." He pulled out a small data device, moving slowly so the guards would not kill him for reaching into his pocket. He activated the holographic display, showing records and patterns he had assembled over years of investigation. "These are the victims I have been able to identify," he said. 57 individuals from 23 species, taken over the past century. These are the locations where they were last seen. These are the patterns in how the ring operates, the timing of their acquisitions, the methods they use. And this, he highlighted a region of space near the edge of the map, is the Darkfall Nebula, where their main base is hidden. The Darkfall Nebula is impossible to navigate, one of the Queen's advisors interrupted. The electromagnetic interference destroys sensors and navigation systems. Any ship that enters does not return. Any ship using standard navigation, Daniel agreed. The ring uses a network of hidden relay beacons to guide their vessels through the interference. I found one of their beacons 8 years ago. I mapped its signal patterns. I can follow them to the source. The Queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, the rage giving way to something more complex. "Why would you do this? What does a human gain from saving a Volanthi princess?" Daniel thought of Lily. He thought of the moment he found her in that cell, thin and frightened but alive. He thought of the look on her face when she realized her father had come for her, that she was not forgotten, that she was going home. "My daughter asked me the same thing," he said. "When I brought her back, she asked why I came for her when everyone told me it was impossible. When her mother begged me to give up. When the authorities said she was probably dead and I should move on with my life." He paused, letting the words settle. "I told her that some things matter more than what is possible. A child was taken from her family. A mother was suffering. Everything else was just details." He met the Queen's gaze. "Your daughter matters. Her pain matters. Your pain matters. I do not need any other reason." The queen rose from her throne, and every being in the chamber went still. She descended the steps slowly, her massive form moving with surprising grace, until she stood directly before Daniel. Her blade arm reached out, and for a moment, he thought she was going to kill him. Instead, she touched the side of his face, the sharp edge of her arm gentle against his skin. She was reading him, he realized. The Volanthi could sense emotional states through physical contact, could taste the truth or deception in another being's chemical signals. Whatever she found in him, it changed something in her. She withdrew her arm and turned to her guards. "Release him." The restraints fell away. Daniel stood, rubbing his wrists. "I will give you one ship," the queen said. "A small crew of my warriors. And 48 hours to find my daughter." She paused. "If you fail, I will destroy the nebula and everything in it. The ring, their prisoners. And you, I understand. Commander Velisor will accompany you. She will be my eyes on this mission." The queen gestured to one of the elite guards, a warrior slightly smaller than the others, but carrying herself with obvious authority. "Do not disappoint me, human. Do not make me regret this moment of hope." Daniel bowed his head. "I will bring her home, Your Majesty. You have my word." As he left the throne chamber with Velisor at his side, Daniel allowed himself to feel the weight of what he had just promised. 48 hours to infiltrate an impenetrable fortress, rescue a princess, and escape from a syndicate that had evaded justice for a century. Impossible odds. Just like before, he had done it once for Lily. He would do it again for Kefsera, because some things mattered more than what was possible. And Daniel Torres had never been very good at accepting limits.